Andrew Staunton, director of John Carter, and Oscar-winning director of Wall-E and Finding Nemo. Absolute pleasure to talk to you,
Oh,
sir.
pleasure to talk to you.
Now, I have to admit, I wasn't familiar with the novels.
It's fine.
And I was wondering, when you read them, what was it about this
What was
story?
I on?
What were you on, basically, to take the story of, an American Civil War hero who travels to Mars and think, no, this will work for contemporary audiences?
Oh, I never think contemporary audience. That whole notion to me is BS. I mean, if I could be a kid in the 70s and love this 1912 book, then somebody in 2012 can like it for the same reasons. It's like saying, whoa, Moby Dick, well, we got to put a battleship and lasers in it for contemporary audience. I've never
I wouldn't be surprised if Hollywood
I know, but that's not a filmmaker or a storyteller thinking like that. That's somebody guessing what the outside world wants. And that's the whole thing that we've always been trying to be open about since the beginning of working on Toy Stories. We don't think about what the rest of the world wants. That's not what we're into it for. We're into it because I can't help myself from wanting to tell this certain story I've got or that I've been inspired by. And I expect the same from musicians, from painters, whenever. I don't expect them to be guessing a demographic or guessing what other people want. They're just doing what they can't stop themselves from doing. And that's what inspires me, is other great artists just being passionate about a calling that they have about something. And so we just try to do the same thing with film. So I don't really question it. I mean, after doing like rats cooking in kitchens and a silent robot and an old man with a Korean boy scout, you think after a while, it's pretty obvious, we're not thinking about what people might want. We're just doing what we want.
And on the entire cast has said that your passion is absolutely infectious. And I mean, the film is so much fun and it's so brilliant. But it must have seemed like a risky pitch, did it? Because
everything's a risky pitch, but that's all I've known. That's the thing. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But it's kind of common now. It's kind of a constant. It's like, it's never going to be easy, guys. Guess what? Here's another thing we're thinking about, And it's because I don't want to see the same thing. I always want to feel like I've gone somewhere and met somebody that I haven't met before and haven't been before. So, and I feel like everybody I've ever talked to that I have any kind of respect for wants the same thing when they go to a movie theater. They don't want to go see the same thing they had. They may say that just because they don't have the imagination to know what it is that scratches they want to itch. So you can't trust the words that come out of their mouth. You just got to know that what they're saying is, I want to feel like I did the last time I saw a great movie. But the truth is, what they really want is something new. So they don't know what that new flavor is that they're trying to describe. That's our job. Our job is to know what people want before they do. That was the smartest thing Steve Jobs ever taught us.
And I mean, speaking of new flavor, I mean, this is your first live action film. I mean, what was the biggest challenge for you, or did you find the entire experience completely rewarding?
Because I'd never done this in my life before, gone out and done a live action movie, that was able to make me sort of be blind to how hard and how painful it was. It really got me through most of it. Just the thrill of like, oh my God, we're outside, there's a real camera, I can touch it, and there's a person I can talk to, and that really got me through so much of it. It really did. But it was a thrill. I mean, to be honest, I spent most of my youth running around with a Super 8 plays, acting all the time. I didn't know I was going to go into animation until like the last minute. Drawing was sort of an aside. And then found that I had a passion for it. So there was an extrovert in me that was like really let free again to like sort of be outside and just be crazy and just, have to work so insane. I mean, I wouldn't want to always do that, but it was fun in the moment.
That cinephile route, I mean, it is very obvious in all of your films. And I know you say, again, you don't go for contemporary audience, you never try and make a kids film. It's always about blending kind of the blockbuster and the artist film, which I think is very obvious here.
Yeah.
Can you just expand on that philosophy?
Well, I'm just being true to who I am. It's just getting more and more aware of who you are. It's like, I don't know. I'm not comparing myself to him, but I recognize that, like, if you look at, like, Paul McCartney, he couldn't help himself. He just went more silly love song, right? I mean, and John Lennon went a little darker. You just recognize more and more how you're wired up. And I think a lot of us that found each other, that people consider the group at Pixar, we do have an all ages sensibility, but we're not trying to. It's just who we are. It's just what comes out. And so all the things I've done have just been a little bit more specific exploration and self-discovery of like, oh, I'm a little bit more mushy and romantic like here. Oh, I like it a little bit darker here. And it's just, that's the fun of it, is finding more specificity about yourself.
And what's it like? I mean, coming from your background, where you create entire worlds from your for your characters in Pixar and like WALL-E and Finding Nemo, and then to come to a project like this where you're adapting a world, is it easier or harder?
I didn't know what it'd be like. It was kind of thrilling just that it was new, but it wasn't easy, but it was a little easier because you weren't starting from a blank paper. You were starting with, I already have names, I already have places, I already have situations, so I could treat it like a first draft of something. But first drafts never fully work. You have a lot of drafts to go to really make it sing on the screen. So it was a great starting point to jump off from.
And I mean, I've no doubt in my mind that this is going to turn into a huge franchise, and the cast are all incredibly enthusiastic. And I hear that you had a bit of a dream come true moment when you met Steven Spielberg and you compared E.T. and WALL-E. That must have been a great moment.
Oh my gosh, I went back to my hotel and I wrote down every nanosecond of what happened during that lunch so I'd never forget it, because I never thought I'd meet him, let alone have a one-on-one lunch with him. So.
Yeah. And what do your kids think of John Carter? Because I know your kids were a huge inspiration for you in most of your films, and particularly
you mean my adults?
Nemo.
They're adults now.
They're adults now, yeah.
My son's very proud. He's an actor now. He's in college, and so he definitely got the bug and can appreciate it on a just as intellectual level as any of my peers, which is kind of really thrilling. And my daughter is happy to not be embarrassed by me.
I know. I hear there is a lovely story about how your relationship with them inspired Finding Nemo, which became such a
particularly my son. My daughter was an infant at the time, but my son was about 4 or 5, and I was trying to figure out what is the core of this story about a fish that suddenly finds itself in a fish tank out of the ocean, and what's it really about. And so I was so busy all the time, I never was really seeing him much, so I had all this pressure to see him on the weekend. So we went for a walk in the park, and I just spent the whole time going, don't touch that, watch out, don't run into the street, you don't know where that's been. And I pissed away the whole, afternoon just worrying that he might get hurt, and couldn't get out of my own way. And I realized that that's a real problem that a parent can have that means well. And so that's really what cemented the meaning behind Nemo.
But if you being a busy dad means you come up with amazing films like John Carter, I think they'll deal now.
I hope so. I hope I haven't been a bad father.
Plus, they're in college now. They don't want you around. They don't want you to know everything that's going on. Andrew Staunton.
Nor do I want to know.
It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.